Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at foundation paper piecing, and we're going to use our Birdwatcher block of the month. And today we're going to look at the robin and looking at all our foundation paper piecing tools. So I have my rotary cutter, I have an add a quarter and an add an eighth ruler. I have another ruler just in case. I have my 7010 Microtex needles for my thread, some glue, some scissors, a pencil just in case, and a folding paper. Today I would really like to demystify the thread that we use in foundation paper piecing. Today I'm going to talk about Decobob, which is our 80 weight cottonized poly, and confetti, which is a 50 weight cotton thread. For foundation paper piecing, I like to reduce the stitch length and have really nice tight flat seams that we can easily remove the paper and get a nice crisp, nice flat seam. Our 50 weight cotton is also great for this, but you are going to get a much thicker seam and you're going to have more thread bulk in that seam. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. Once you have printed your pattern on either a newsprint or just a regular bond paper with your printer, I want you to make sure that your guide here is accurate, because sometimes I forget to make it 100%, and you want to make sure that this is printed at the same scale. So I'm going to take my little ruler out, I'm going to measure this and make sure that that's accurately 1 inch, and each of my pages are printed with that. The fabric cutting guide is laid out with the same gray, cream, orange, turquoise, brown, black background pieces. So generally I will cut one strip of fabric and then I'll subcut it into all the parts. Each one of these parts is labeled according to your diagram here. So today I'm going to take this unit here. Okay, this is our little bird's eye. So 1A is black, and then I'm going to follow the directions here. So I'll sew A to B, then B to C, and so forth. Okay, most of us have fabric or paper scissors. Unfortunately, I'm just going to cut it with my fabric scissors, but you're not going to tell, right? Once I've cut out my unit, I'm going to gather all the pieces that I need for that. Okay, so I need my black 1A, and here's my BC piece, and then I have my DE, and last but not least, my G piece here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score my foundation paper piece on each of these lines. So I generally just have like a piece of cardboard, and the first line that I'm going to do is A to B. Okay, so I'm going to do A to B and then B to C and the D unit here, and so forth. Okay. Once I have this scored on my sewing lines, I'm going to grab my fabric and I'm going to make sure that it's going to fit over, completely cover my 1A piece. And you can see here I've got a nice 1/4 inch all the way around. I'm going to take my glue stick and just apply a slight piece of glue to the back of my paper, and I'm going to make sure that my fabric is glued there. Okay. Now I'm going to take my add a quarter ruler, or a ruler that has a good 1/4 inch seam that you can see, and I'm going to trim this fabric back. Okay. Now I can take my orange, my 1B piece. I'm going to put it on my back here. You can now pin it or just flip it to make sure that 1B is completely covered, okay, when you fold it back. Now we're ready to sew 1A to 1B. One thing I want to point out is you need to sew 1/4 inch past your sewing line and then 1/4 or 2 to 3 stitches past this line here. And then after that, we're gonna trim, sew, press. So those are the 3 things you need to remember: trim, sew, press. So here we've sewn the black eye, 1A to 1B, and now I'm going to press this and show a nice flat, nice flat seam there, okay? Then we're gonna do C, fold back. You might have to take a couple of those stitches off so that you're on the stitch line. I'm going to take my little ruler and hide back here and give that 1/4 inch cut. Okay, we're here. And now we're going to put piece C on. Okay, now we're going to press. You can finger press. You can use your little iron here. And now we're going to go to piece D. Okay, same thing here. Pull back those few stitches. Make sure that's pressed properly. Now I'm going to trim my 1/4 inch. I would like to remind you that your stitch length should be shortened to 1.8 or 1.5. And just so you know, I'm using a 7010 Microtex needle. Okay, so that's our next piece on here, piece E. And now I'm just going to give that a quick little press. Okay. Maybe I should turn this on. Okay, we're going to trim back because now we're going to do F. So trim back here. I'm going to cut my 1/4 inch here. Okay, so I have my nice 1/4 inch. I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to lay my F piece on here. I'm going to make sure that I have good coverage on all sides of that. Make sure that you cover your 1/4 inch here and here and at the top here. Okay, now once that's done, I'm going to stitch it down and make sure that you're sewing right on that line, because then you're going to have the most accurate little piece. Okay, and I'm stitching right through that 1/4 inch. Okay. Okay, fold and press. Okay. And now we're going to do G. So fold G back to the line. Okay, we're going to cut this excess fabric off here. So trim it. Okay, now I'm going to get 1G. Here's my 1G fabric. I'm going to lay that down. Make sure I have enough coverage, which I do. Sew down G. G, fold it back, press, so trim, sew, press. I have to remind myself about that all the time. And then now we're going to go to the last piece, which is H. Here's my H background fabric. So I'm going to fold that. Lots of times I'll just use a folding. Make sure it's folded nice and crisp. Okay. Now I'm going to trim this. Trim. Okay. Now I have a nice piece of background here. I'm going to make sure that that has good coverage. I'm going to lay that down. I'm going to press this last seam. Make sure you're out into that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're stitching right on that line. And we're almost done this unit. Okay. We're going to press the background piece here. Okay. I'm just going to trim my 1/4 inch all the way around this unit. So one, I'm going to turn this here. That's why I like to leave fabric and a little bit of paper on the side. 2. Now this is where I would have a rotating mat would be perfect, but I don't have one of those. So side 3, our little angle here is angle 4. And 5. Okay, now let's flip it over. There, our little bird's eye is complete. So I have pieced 2 of these units for our little robin. One is pieced with our deco bob, and the other is pieced with the confetti. If you look really, really closely, you can see how much less shadow this seam has and how much flatter it is than this one. If you could actually pick this up and feel it, you can feel that there is a lot more thread, denser thread in that, even though I was still using a similar stitch length and I was trying to get those really nice crisp seams and press it nice and flatly, you're still gonna see shadow right here. Okay, and this is flatter. I'm gonna quickly remove the paper on the top part here. You can see how easy it pulls out with the deco bob, and it pulls out fairly well with the confetti, the 50 weight cotton as well. So I'm going to quickly just remove this. This is the fun part, right? And especially when you look at this top seam here, you can see how much more shadow there is here and how much deeper this seam is and how much more thread bulk there is in the cotton, the 50 weight cotton as opposed to the 80 weight cottonized poly.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great tips, tricks, and tutorials. You can also sign up for our weekly newsletter to get the first look at free projects, sewing tips, and inspiring tutorials delivered right to your inbox. Check out the description box below to sign up, as well as find a list of stores and retailers that you can purchase Wonderfill threads from in your country.